It was a night like any other. The soft hum of the air conditioner, the faint glow of the streetlights outside, and the comforting routine of bedtime. And yet, for one family, it would be the last night of normalcy they'd ever know. In the dark silence of a quiet suburban home, a mother tucked her 3 children into bed, kissed them goodnight, and promised to see them in the morning. But she would never be seen again. Her name was Claire Thompson. By all accounts, she was a loving mother, dedicated to her children and her family. But when dawn broke the next day, Claire had vanished without a trace. The house was undisturbed, her belongings left behind, and the only clue to her disappearance, a single, cryptic note on the kitchen counter. Claire Thompson, 38 years old, was a devoted mother and wife living in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Maplewood. Her life was anything but glamorous, but it was filled with love, laughter, and the kind of simple joy many longed for. She was known as the kind of person who would go out of her way to make her neighbors' lives a little brighter. A smile, a warm conversation, and always the first to offer help when anyone was in need. Her husband, Mark, was a quiet, reserved man, a mechanic by trade, who spent his days in the garage working on cars and his nights binge-watching his favorite shows with Claire. Together, they had 3 children, 12-year-old Grace, 8-year-old Henry, and 5-year-old Lily. To outsiders, the Thompsons seemed like the perfect family, always together, always happy. But no one knew the secrets Claire had been hiding. Mark Thompson was not the man Claire's friends thought he was. Beneath his mild-mannered exterior lay a man capable of far more darkness than anyone could imagine. He had grown up in a turbulent home where violence and neglect were part of the everyday routine. His father had been a cruel man, quick to anger and slow to love. Mark, though he tried to escape it, carried that legacy with him. Over the years, Claire had noticed little signs: how Mark would snap when things didn't go his way, how he would retreat into himself for days after an argument. But she never believed he could be dangerous, not to her, and certainly not to their children. That was until Claire began to suspect something darker. She noticed the way Mark would stare at their youngest daughter, Lily, as if something was simmering beneath the surface, a tension that left her unsettled. It started with small incidents, a misplaced comment, a lingering touch, but Claire had always chalked it up to stress, work, and the pressures of life. It wasn't until the night before her disappearance that Claire finally confronted her husband. Mark had become increasingly agitated in the weeks leading up to Claire's disappearance. His temper had grown shorter, his moods darker, and Claire had started to fear the worst. Late one evening, she sat him down, hoping to talk through their issues, unaware that the conversation would become their last. "Mark, I need to know the truth," Claire had said, her voice trembling but firm. "Are you still the man I married? Or have you become someone else?" Mark had stared at her, his face frozen in a mask of anger. "You don't understand," he had whispered. "You never have. You never will." But Claire didn't back down. She had made plans to leave. She knew she couldn't stay in a marriage where fear loomed over her, where the man she loved had turned into someone unrecognizable. She had already reached out to a lawyer, prepared the paperwork, and was going to take her children away in the morning. But that morning would never come. The night Claire vanished was eerily calm. It was a Tuesday, a school night. After tucking her children into bed, Claire kissed them goodnight and promised to see them in the morning. The last words she spoke to her children would haunt them forever. "Sweet dreams, my loves. I'll always be here for you." But she wasn't. By morning, Claire Thompson had vanished. Mark woke up to a quiet house and Claire and the kids out of sight. "I'm leaving. I'm taking the kids with me." Mark's heart dropped, panic rising in his chest. Claire had been serious about leaving him, about getting out of this house, and he wasn't about to let that happen. But how far could she have gone in the dead of night? And why hadn't she taken the children with her? As Mark called the police and described the situation, the investigation began. But what they found was chilling. There were no signs of a struggle, no forced entry. Nothing seemed amiss except for Claire's sudden disappearance. But as detectives combed through the house, they found something that made their stomachs churn. Hidden in the attic, Claire's personal belongings, packed neatly, as if she had been planning to leave for weeks. But the most disturbing discovery came later that afternoon. When officers checked the family's surveillance cameras, they saw Mark sneaking out in the middle of the night, carrying something heavy. But what was it? And where did he go? Detectives launched a full-scale search for Claire, questioning neighbors, friends, and even her family, but the trail went cold. And then, just as the case was beginning to fade from the headlines, the shocking truth came to light. Weeks passed, and still no sign of Claire. But then a breakthrough came. An anonymous tip led police to a secluded patch of woods near Mark's childhood home. Hidden beneath the thick brush, they found a shallow grave. Inside the grave was Claire. But she wasn't alone. Alongside her was the body of her daughter, Grace. The realization hit hard. Mark had killed his wife, but he hadn't stopped there. He had murdered their oldest daughter, too. But why? What had driven him to kill the woman he once loved and the daughter he had raised? Why had he left Lily and Henry alive? As the investigation deepened, new details began to emerge about Mark's past. Things he had hidden from everyone, including Claire. But the truth about what happened to Grace and Claire, why they were murdered and why only Lily and Henry were spared, remains unclear. Was it truly the result of a single brutal act of rage? Or was there something more sinister at play? And, most chilling of all, where is Mark now? He's vanished without a trace. The hunt for Mark Thompson is on, but as the search intensifies, so does the fear that there may be more to this story than anyone could have anticipated. What was the true motive behind Claire's disappearance? Who was the real monster hiding behind Mark's quiet demeanor? The search for Mark Thompson had reached a fever pitch. The discovery of Claire and Grace's bodies in that shallow grave sent shockwaves through the community. But one question gnawed at everyone's mind. Why had he spared Lily and Henry? The authorities had no answers, until now. As the investigation into Mark Thompson's past deepened, detectives uncovered a string of chilling connections. It wasn't just Mark's violent history that was a cause for concern. No, this was much darker. There were unsettling parallels between Mark's actions and a series of unsolved disappearances dating back years. Unsolved cases that had never been linked together until now. But this isn't just about a father's shocking betrayal. No, what detectives unearthed next would turn everything upside down. For weeks, Lily and Henry had been the only surviving witnesses to the crime, the only two people who could hold the key to Mark's motivations. But Lily had refused to speak, her silence like a heavy fog in the investigation. That was until her phone was found. Tucked under a pile of old clothes in her bedroom, hidden in a drawer she had no reason to hide it in, Lily's phone held the answers. When police examined it, they discovered a series of cryptic messages sent the night before Claire's disappearance. One message in particular stood out. It was sent to her father, Mark, late at night, after Claire had tucked her in and said goodnight. "Dad, you promised. You won't let them leave, right? I'm scared." The authorities hadn't realized just how deep Mark's influence on his children was. These words hinted at a terrifying reality. Lily knew something. She had known something was wrong. But what did she know about her father? What had she been afraid of? And then came the bombshell that no one saw coming. A journal belonging to Claire Thompson was found in the attic of the house. Its discovery was a crucial turning point. It wasn't just a journal of a wife's thoughts. It was a collection of fragments of a life she had been forced to hide. For years, Claire had been quietly documenting Mark's erratic behavior and his increasingly violent tendencies. But there was more. Claire had written about Mark's obsession with power and control, and his growing interest in a mysterious figure from his past. It wasn't just about his father's abuse anymore, no. Mark had been involved with something far darker, something Claire had tried to protect their children from. The journal revealed that Mark had been secretly connected to a criminal organization, a group with ties to the underworld, drug trafficking, money laundering, and even human trafficking. Mark had been laundering money for years, using his mechanic shop as a front. But it was more than just business. He had grown increasingly involved in the organization's darker dealings. Claire had written, "He keeps telling me that they won't let him go, that if he tries to leave, they'll come for us. I don't believe him. I refuse to. But I can feel it. Something's wrong." At this point, detectives started connecting the dots between Mark's secret criminal activities and a string of unsolved disappearances stretching across the state. These weren't just isolated incidents, they were linked. And it wasn't just random people being targeted. Each case involved someone close to Mark, a former business partner, a woman he had once known, a person who had crossed him. And now, Claire had become part of the deadly pattern. But there was something even darker lurking beneath the surface. Detectives unearthed a connection that had remained hidden for years. Mark Thompson's real motive was never just about escaping his troubled marriage or keeping the children under control. It was about silencing anyone who could expose the truth. The truth about his involvement in a human trafficking ring. As the investigation into Mark's secret life continued, detectives discovered that Claire had been on the verge of blowing the lid off the organization. She had been secretly documenting everything, gathering evidence of Mark's criminal ties. She was planning to go public with it, to expose the truth about her husband's activities. But someone had known she was getting too close. But just when investigators thought they had pieced it all together, a shocking phone call turned the case on its head. The caller was anonymous, their voice distorted. "I know where Mark is hiding, and I know what you've uncovered. But if you think it's over, you're wrong. There's more to Claire's disappearance than you realize. Much more." The call was abruptly cut off, and before the authorities could track it, the lead investigator assigned to the case, Detective Sarah Walker, disappeared without a trace. She had been working tirelessly on the case, digging into the criminal organization that Mark had been involved with. But now, she was gone. Vanished into thin air, just like Claire. What did Detective Walker discover that she wasn't supposed to? Was she getting too close to the truth? Or was there a more sinister force working in the shadows, controlling everything? As the case spirals into darkness, the stakes have never been higher. Who is pulling the strings behind the scenes? And what does Mark Thompson know that could bring down an entire criminal empire? Stay tuned as the hunt for the truth continues and as Claire's secrets are uncovered. Secrets that could destroy everything we thought we knew about this case. If you've been following the case, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like the video, and comment below with your thoughts. Do you think the missing detective was just a coincidence? Or is there a bigger story hiding in the shadows? Stay tuned for part 2 for more shocking twists in this chilling saga.